Hey everyone, welcome to Powertime. Let's have a listen to what's on today's show.
And I think, like all major shifts, it sort of goes through a maturity curve, and we are sort of rocketing up that maturity curve right now. And we have some amazing stories coming out of that. We were at the European Power Platform Conference last month. Heineken, talked about how they enable, almost 100,000 users on Power Platform with a team of less than 5 people. What people also may not realize is that now Copilot Studio is a first-class citizen in that managed platform. Don't make the right thing the easy thing. The alternative is usually much scarier.
Let's get into it.
It's power time. Get ready, let's go.
Hey everyone, welcome to Power Time. I'm here with a very special guest and someone returning back to the show, which is awesome. Mr. Ryan Cunningham is one of our favourite guests to come on the show. Ryan, maybe just a quick intro for those that missed the first episode, and maybe there's a few people on the planet who don't know who you are.
I'm always shocked to be invited back somewhere. So question the wisdom of the host. No, so my role, I work at Microsoft. I'm the corporate vice president for our Power Platform applications, or kind of our low-code app platform. Power Apps is what most people know it as. I look after that. Power Pages, a bunch of our governance investments, and sort of the core product development and engineering behind the platform.
Yeah, which is awesome, which is something we talk about a lot on this podcast. In fact, it's what we center around. We believe with the intersection, I guess, between AI and low code, that's when you can really optimize your processes. On the last one, we spoke heavily about agents. We kind of called it the year of the agents. We're halfway through the year. It's definitely the year of the agents. We're seeing some really impressive demos come out of the teams at the moment, and customer expectations are higher than ever. What's top of mind for you at the moment, right?
Oh, it is the year of the agents for sure, Scott. Yeah. I think next year is going to be the year of the agents too. There's decade of agents.
Decade of the agents.
At least. And I think, like all major shifts, it sort of goes through a maturity curve, and we are sort of rocketing up that maturity curve right now in really interesting ways. And so it's a really cool time to be in this space and in tech in general.
Yeah, awesome. One of the things that you and I spoke about in Seattle a week ago. Geez, time's not going that fast, but a week ago was governance, and so we're finding with a lot of customers now, they want to turn on the technology, but maybe their security team is saying, that they maybe can't turn it on because the connectors and everything's locked down. How are we progressing around governance? Because I know you and I had a really healthy discussion around the platform now is ready to go for all of the agents that are getting deployed.
Yeah, 100%. I think, some people may not be following, but we have just made amazing progress in what we consider now the managed platform for Power Platform.
Yes.
What started with a simple feature that we called managed environments a couple of years ago, has really broadened out into fully managed governance, security, availability, operations. We have a ton of investment, including a lot of AI investment, going into that space continuously on, how do you really automate the way that you govern and secure an innovation platform. And we have some amazing stories coming out of that. We were at the European Power Platform Conference last month. Heineken, talked about how they enable, almost 100,000 users on Power Platform with a team of less than 5 people, in their core center enablement, because they're using the managed platform to really extend what they can do. What people also may not realize is that now Copilot Studio is a first-class citizen in that managed platform. So, anything that I do to set an environment routing rule, a policy for data loss prevention, a pipeline for deployment, all those features now work in Copilot Studio as well for all the agents that I create and the people working in Copilot Studio to create those agents. And so that's a big advantage, because I think the pickle that a lot of customers are in is, I want to use this stuff. I want to go fast. I don't want to end up in the news for the wrong reasons. So there's sort of sort of like I got to be caught in between the two. But specifically on going fast, the pace of kind of having one agent a year, kind of hire one team of professionals to build one thing at a time in a very highly trusted, centralized way, just doesn't really scale right now. Like we got to go build a lot of things all at once, and we have to go kind of get closer to the expertise in the business about those processes. And so that's where I need a platform. I need an abstraction layer, but I have to have the security and the trust and responsibility to make it viable. And that's really where Copilot Studio specifically, but just Power Platform all up, is thriving right now. It's got that speed of what we see in our LinkedIn feeds about vibe coding, but it's also got the trust of what we really expect from an enterprise platform.
It's interesting,
I love it.
because the Power Platform kind of, if you think about it, it really is vibe coding. And if you think about years ago, we spoke about have a small team to scale fast. Yep. We're kind of ahead of the curve on a lot of the AI. We spoke about governance. It really fits nicely for agents, right? Because if you're in an organization, you're fixing all these business processes and you've got thousands of agents, you don't want to have thousands of tools either, because then you've got no visibility of the agents, right? So I think it's the perfect place for enterprise agents, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think
given how easy it is to build agents. So you go, Ryan.
No, please. Yeah.
I was going to say, given how easy it is to build agents now, it's really important that we do have those governance layers. So we're really creating sort of that freedom in a framework, within managed environments, managed platforms. So that was kind of my point. So
No, and I think a lot of customers, particularly when we talk to security professionals, which we spend a lot of time doing, and especially in our most highly regulated customer bases in financial services and government, they absolutely have to secure their environments. At the same time, if they don't make the right thing the easy thing, the alternative is usually much scarier. There are dozens and dozens of startups getting funded every single week in this space that are easily available to end users. Very little stops an end user from doing something on their personal device and bring it onto your corporate network. Like the idea that I can shut off one route and that sort of blocks all risk is a very short-sighted idea. And so like a lot of the most progressive leaning customers are really pushing us to say, how do we make the path that users want to go down and they will have to go down also a path that we can govern and manage and secure. And that's really the right place to be. If you make the right way the hard thing, then 1,000 flowers are going to bloom, and you're not going to be able to IP block all of them. Sort of like things will happen. And I think that's really the way to think about it. Because moving too fast is risky, but standing still is even riskier in a time of change.
I agree,
and I think that's just the mentality that a lot of organizations have to wrap their mind around right now.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I completely agree. One of the things that we're working on at the moment is sort of like AI COE. We worked previously at a lot of Power Platform COEs back in the day, but we're really infusing that AI COE layer into that. I guess talk to me about, are you working with other organizations on a similar path and trajectory when it comes to incorporating AI into their broader Power Platform strategies?
And I think that even the notion of what that means is evolving really quickly. Even 6 months ago, if you said to the average CIO, who's in your AI center of excellence and who's there, if they had one, they would probably talk to you about all the data scientists that they just hired and the fine tuning that they're doing and the evals that they're running, and all of that is actually really important going forward. But it's also insufficient to the broader goal. If you talk to people now, like who's really pushing AI in the organization, the most progressive organizations are looking at, how do I really upskill every single operating business unit to go actually apply this stuff in a way that's going to cut costs, increase revenue, save time, dramatically expand, customer care quality, whatever it is, like apply it, right? And so I think we're really moving from kind of the academic side of excellence in AI to really the applied science of just put it in people's hands, make it work. And I think that will continue to be a really important part of the shift over the years ahead. Yeah,
I definitely see my team, their role over the next 12 months is to really lean in and support customers and transforming their business process and adapting that to the environment. A lot of times when I talk to senior people, particularly in FSI, they'll tell us, hey, your product's great, we love what you can do, but in our environment, maybe it's not going to work, right? And that's the real key in our lockdown kind of thing. So we kind of have to go in and decipher, how we get it working in their environment, not just in a demo environment. So, but I've just a year of technology. I've never seen such excitement. One of the best things that we saw, and Matt and I personally get excited about, is Power Apps Planner and the ability to be able to just sit there and talk about an app, load up some pictures, creates a whole bunch of stuff. If anyone hasn't seen it, we'll put a link in the show notes. But how's that tracking? Because we love what you're doing.
Oh man, talk about a year of change. Gosh, that thing was born as an idea, like a glimmer of a what if, like maybe 13 months ago, like at the most. Wow. A year ago at this time, it was not even something you could touch and use. It was just the beginnings of APIs, and now we're generally available around the world. Tens of thousands of people are building plans and Power Apps every single month. We're starting to see actually the first wave of production apps that were created from a plan. That's into cool. Production, and ramp. Actually, there's more. We track that rigorously. We track not just kind of the vanity metrics of who tinkered and built something, but did I deploy an app that was used by a substantial number of users who were not the developer? That's really the gold standard. And did I do that because I built it from a plan? That number is going up every single day. So that's really encouraging for us. That's what we want to see. And we just barely entered general availability a couple of weeks ago, so we're at a good clip and trajectory there. But in some ways, it feels like a really big leap forward. In other ways, it's just exactly what we've been doing around software for decades. You don't very few people building serious software like sit down on day one, take one sentence of input and just start immediately writing code. And if they do, they generally end up with not the right thing. So all the plan does is it kind of mimics what we do in a human software team with a virtual team of agents. Let's actually step back. Let's think through the requirements. Let's think through the users involved in the situation. Let's build a data model. Let's understand the processes. Let's create a solution architecture, because you're probably going to need to build multiple things. And then let's go generate them quickly. Not only does that, I think, follow the path that most humans are used to, that we've proven over decades creates better software. It also creates better AI output, right? Because humans are actually generally pretty bad at prompting models in very detailed, granular terms. Really, a lot of what the plan is doing is building a much richer set of input iteratively to AI to go create better outputs out the other side. And so it's really getting the best of the technology, as well as just sort of things that people are already familiar with based on how they've worked.
I think even what I really love about that tool is even if the app doesn't go into production, the fact that you can get kind of 4 or 5 people in the business unit together, and then they can come up with a prototype of a business process, and then give that to the team that is going to put that into production. I think that in itself saves weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of work, right? Yeah. Compared to how 100%. We used to do it in the past. Or even like for a channel partner, Matt, like you guys, being able to go in and do, a workshop in the morning and then go ahead and really just in the afternoon, put it into Planner and then create the app and the process and everything you need to.
We're using it quite a lot at the moment. We're sort of looking into it, exploring it. I think it's such a unique product compared to what else is available. But again, as Ryan alluded to before, it's focusing on what is the problem at hand. Yeah, what is the actual business process and business requirement that we're trying to solve, and then let's build software. Everyone's so gun ho at the moment and trying to stand up these vibe coding applications. They don't even know what they're building at the end of the day. You know what I mean? They're piecing all this stuff together. Plan is really taking it back and incorporating all the goodness of what's happening with speed to build, but actually focusing again on that business problem. So
and look, both are important. Another important part of how we build software and have for decades is we make a really early crummy first version of it, and then we realize it's not what we want. We change it, we iterate. And so, that's also why we're really excited about things like generative pages and doing code gen directly inside of Power Apps. We will bring more and more of those vibe coding experiences much more into the mainstream, even into the plan design process, because humans are just visual creatures. It's really useful to have, a visual representation of things that I can react to. But to your point, Matt, like that first screen is not the end of the journey. It's just a starting point to sort of kind of think, are we on the right track, and can we get to something where I'm actually going to go build robust software here?
Yeah.
So moving from that into agents, the agent to agent kind of protocol, MCP, phenomenal step forward, I think, for the industry, not just for Microsoft supporting that. We're looking forward to kind of the day where we can just build an agent, and there's an agent for some of our customers, and you can just connect from agent to agent. The agent can go and do things. Where do you think the UI really lands in that, right? So if you think of today, I'll give you a quick example. We've got a contact center application, CCAS, Dynamics Contact Center. Today, person in the middle, and you've got channels, people come in on different channels. We can just redirect those channels in the future to an agent to go and solve the problem. They don't actually even need to go into that SaaS product and really do anything. What's kind of the vision there, do you think, with this kind of tooling? Do you think the agent to agent thing is really going to make a huge impact?
So look, I think whether it's literally the A to A protocol, which is actually separate from MCP, there's a lot of different open standards popping up in the market right now.
Yeah, there's
that's probably a whole separate podcast for a different set of people. But I think the concept of agents need to interact with each other and with humans, like that absolutely is a given and a must. And there will be a lot of different ways at that, and we will all have to figure it out as an industry. And from a Microsoft perspective, we're supporting all the open standards we can as this sort of concept, continues to advance and different ways of implementing it gel. Because you're right, it's just an inevitability. If you think about agents as digital coworkers, in a world in which we will have many more of them than we do today, then they're going to have to talk to each other. It's going to be super weird if your coworkers just sit in a corner and only do their one thing. I think we all work with somebody like that. It's generally not a good experience. Wasn't
that Silicon Valley back about 15 years ago? Exactly. Everyone's in their cubicle each other.
So that's an inevitability. Now the question is, those agents are also going to work with humans, right? And I think that's the role of user experiences, is really the interface between humans and agents. And that boundary will shift. Like over time, if more and more basic support tickets can just be solved autonomously, then I need fewer and fewer, rich, heavy apps. But that's not going to be a binary switch by any means. If our own experience is anything, we've been on a journey for more than 2 years to apply agents to reducing tickets in Power App support queues. And we've made phenomenal progress. Actually, we've more than doubled the number of users who help themselves before they have to file a support ticket. But it's not like it's gone to zero overnight. So I think, there will always be that need. But I think also the need will change. As digital coworkers can do more and more of the lower level information work, the data entry, the basic lookup, the retrieval, the first drafts, it does change the sort of nature of what we expect humans to do. And that creates a whole bunch of new interface opportunities, things that just don't exist today. And in fact, it means that actually most of our business software that was built for an agentless world is basically obsolete. Some of it may go away, but a lot of it we're also going to have to rethink and rewrite for a world in which our workforces are both human and agent based.
Makes sense.
And that's why, if you think about the early phase of AI, like there was a time when even this company and many around the market just sort of initially assumed like, all software doesn't go away, and it'll just be either chat interfaces or full autonomy lights out. If you fast forward to right where we are right now, literally this morning, Lovable raised $200 million on a $1.8 billion valuation. They launched that product 8 months ago. And they build user experiences. That's just one of many vibe coding startups, right? And so, and I think there are dozens and more of them entering the market every day. And I think if you had asked most of the players in the market a year or two ago, hey, would the hottest VC fundable thing in mid 2025 be app builders? they might have laughed at you. And now, like, it's obvious to people that actually we have to go build and rebuild a whole bunch of user experiences. And previously it wasn't really possible or practical to build them, and we were building them for the wrong purposes. That's actually super exciting. So, the app of the future is going to change a lot, but the ability to have them and create them and sort of evolve them is more important now than it ever has been.
Yeah, 100%.
Seems like a really good segue to the agent feed. That was one of the jaw-dropping announcements at Build. Do you want to kind of talk to the audience here about what agent feed is? Because it really talks about bringing humans and agents together in that sort of experience. So you're mapping through your business process. So good segue to that. So
so for those who haven't seen it, agent feed is a feature of Power Apps where I can link up specific agents built in Copilot Studio. And then in the app, I see a feed of their activity. And really that becomes a prioritization queue because it shows me both the fully autonomous actions, where all the things that the agents just did work on my behalf, and I can spot check it if I want. But really what it's about is the place where the agents need human intervention. Here's a place where an agent tried to close a case or work a support ticket or file a purchase order, whatever it was, and wasn't able to do it or didn't do it or needed additional input. Now I need the human manager of that agent to take action. And I think that was a big eye opener for a lot of people because, in a very simplistic view, either we see agents as fully autonomous and never needing help, or we see agents as a thing that I chat with inside of a chat interface. And I think that, that actually is the right place to interact with an agent if I'm using a personal productivity scenario. Hey, go research this thing for me or go build me a PowerPoint for something. Chat is a great interface to go kick off that kind of agent. But if I'm a regional manager at a bank and I have agents processing hundreds of thousands of transactions a day, going and sort of figuring out the hundreds that I need to intervene with and unblock, chat is a terrible interface for that. So I need to sort of need more structured, feeds of information. I need to see grids. I need to do analysis. I need to dig into, forms and records that are trimmed for security and have specific fields on them. And that's where we have all these different user experience needs. And that's what business applications are built for. And so we really think there's that role, a real role of an agent manager. And it's not a developer role. That's not somebody in Copilot Studio. In fact, I don't want my regional agent manager at the bank to go change the agent itself. I want it to really deal with the work and the activity and be a coworker to the agent. And that's what a business application is for. And so, the agent feed is early. It's a preview today, but really the goal is to kind of create that focused interface between humans and agents working on very specific things. And really what that evolves to over time is not just a raw feed of activity, but really it's a prioritization agent in and of itself, right? It's saying think of it as even a separate agent working on all of these different streams of activity, things that agents did, things that humans did, things that machines did, and then coming to a human and saying, Scott, your job is X based on all this stuff that happened yesterday. Here's what I want you to focus on today. Here's where I need your help. In some ways, it's also agents helping manage human work as much as it is humans managing the work of the agents.
It's really interesting because that opens up kind of the thought process because they're onboarded into Entra as a kind of an employee. You could have a FedEx agent that sits, in your console, and if you need to book deliveries, you just hit the FedEx agent up, and then it automatically knows how to connect back to the FedEx systems and go and dispatch something. So we could be in a world, and you could actually onboard them as a guest with B2C or something like that. They could have authentication, security, everything. So I think that's a really interesting place to be as an employee then, because you could be managing maybe 10 agents plus some contractor agents. Interesting. Yeah, really interesting place. Yeah,
you start to think about it as the agent org chart, right? And you may not realize it, but legitimately, I have several agents working for me already. Researcher, I think of as an agent on my team from Copilot, in Microsoft, and it does work for me all the time.
Yeah,
I will somebody will drop a whole customer escalation on me or a whole new set of documents on me. And I will often now delegate that to researcher and say, hey, go read through all this stuff initially and go bring back to me the TLDR and figure it out. I've actually been, using that output and then using, text to speech and basically building myself personalized podcasts, and I listen to them on my commutes, which is just a super interesting way of working and a good productivity hack.
It's the second time this week we've heard that, Ryan. And
oh, cool!
Another. So people.
It's a trend. It's a trend.
I think so. The podcasting's really cool. I mean, we're going through account planning right now with the sales team, and of course we've had accounts kind of shuffle, part of AI business solutions, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But it's phenomenal how many of the sales team now are using researcher to go look at all these customers, come back and tell me, is there any pain points? Is there, what are they interested in? What are their goals? Go and have a look. If it's a public company, go and have a look, at their balance sheet and tell me what they're investing in. It's and the outputs are amazing. That's the researcher agent's really, really good for that. So
100%. But that's just one example of that's an agent that reports to you directly. And there's an analyst that reports to you, and there are app builder agents that report to you, and there are automation agents that report to you, right? And I think looking at that as really an augmentation of human capability is really powerful.
Yeah. Now, I said we'd talk about AI Business Solutions. So for those listening in, AI Business Solutions is the amalgamation of Modern Work and the old BizApps team, which I was in. Fantastic org structure for MCAPS, which is our sales organization, which I'm also in. Ryan, the engineering team must be incredibly excited about this merge and having, such a crew of capable people now to go and talk through business process for customers.
Yeah, 100%. I think, in some ways, gosh, we've been working so closely with the broader Microsoft 365 ecosystem for so long that it feels like kind of a non-change in our world. It's like, from an engineering perspective, if you think about even the way that Power Apps got born was really out of Jeff Teeper at the time, as we were bringing SharePoint Online to the world, saying, I don't want to go rebuild InfoPath in the cloud. Let's take a bet on Power Platform, even its early infancy. So we've been kind of tied at the hip from a engineering and product innovation experience perspective for a very long time. But I think if you zoom out, it is really related actually to this prior conversation. Like, the future of modern work is not just individuals manually emailing each other and creating documents. The future of modern work is a collaboration with a whole different type of workforce. And the real transformation comes when, we can unlock major improvement for the actual operation of those businesses. What does it mean to not just write an email 10% faster? What does it mean to have 10 times better customer service? 10 times better throughput and output, 10 times lower cost in an area? What kind of major unlock does that create in every competitive industry? That's really what we need to be thinking about. And if we try to silo it into individual technologies too much, which Microsoft, I think, historically has always grappled with, we'll say it that way. And if you look at how even our field organizations were set up over the last several years, but even just how a lot of customers' technical organizations were set up, you have all this very, sort of narrow specialization that has built up over a decade plus of the SaaS era and cloud era. And forget Microsoft for a minute. If I'm in a customer organization and I have an RPA team with an RPA budget and an RPA vendor, gosh, suddenly everything starts to look like an RPA problem. And I'm not really thinking about the broader end-to-end of how to make the whole business work better, or at least I'm only thinking in the scope of how this one thing can make it better. And I think what you see in this shift for Microsoft is to kind of wipe some of that away and say, actually, no, we should be thinking more broadly. We should be thinking more holistically. What does it mean to really solve business problems at a big level, really unlock opportunity at a big level? And can we have more generalists, frankly, and fewer isolated specialists in a good way to start thinking more left to right? And that's, I think, really what is the most exciting piece for me in this is, kind of that recognition that in a time of change, you really need a broad perspective, and you need a partner with a broad perspective. And that I think is really important in the year ahead.
Yeah, and I think one of the big changes that we made now is my whole team is now branded solution engineers, which
cool.
is great. Yeah. So that means that we're going to go a lot more technical. The team's really technical anyway, but we're going to go technical, lean more into agents, more into Copilot Studio, and really work hand in hand with your team. So, cool. which is amazing, which we've done in the past, but I think now it's turning a corner around that. So I'm really excited for what's going forward this financial year and the changes and how we're going to work together, which is awesome.
Indeed.
Back onto technology. Before we have to wrap up the podcast, I need to know what can we look forward to over the next 12 months? Any exciting products? Any top of mind?
Just a little bit,
just a few things, man. There is so much happening. I would say we're steering rapidly into a whole nother season of disclosures. We're recording this in July. I don't know when you're going to air it, but you look at there's major things in September, October, November. So it's going to be a very busy fall for us across a lot of places.
Yeah.
But I think if you without getting in trouble with any of my PR colleagues, I think if you go look kind of the arc of where things are headed, you called it out yourself. We're really looking at a very different way to create things and operate them. And if you start specifically in the application space, then we can kind of zoom out from there. All the core pieces are falling into place. This whole idea of start with a plan, generate user experiences directly in code, create apps that themselves are intelligent, that have agents built into them, that are really about this interface between humans and agents, and then deploy that on a fully managed platform at huge scale and do it over and over and over again, not just once, but really use that engine as a way to really modernize a lot of software. The conversation with customers about Power Apps is not, what does it mean to build your first app, or what's the ROI of a citizen development program? I mean, throw all that stuff out the window. It is, how do we cancel 25% of your SaaS contracts next year?
Yeah.
That's recreate really that work on a much more modern platform. And that's how all these pieces are coming together. That's why plans are important. That's why generative experiences are important. That's why agent feeds and agents in apps are important, because it really is going to take that whole thing, especially why governance and security is important, to really make that enterprise transformation pragmatic for customers. And so, you better believe there's a lot more stuff and incremental improvement, but also big new sets of capabilities that will land along that kind of end-to-end journey over the next, several months and in perpetuity. I mean, this is a time where the software is never done. It's always changing. Now, obviously, that's just the human experience side of it. If you think about the agent side of it, then, also a lot of really quick and interesting evolution in that space. How do agents use computers? How do they write and execute their own code? How do they talk to other systems, efficiently and effectively through open protocols, through other pieces of connectivity? How do they have their own identity inside of an organization? If I think of an agent as a digital coworker, I should be able to communicate with it. I should be able to hire and fire it. What does it mean to grant it access? So there's a whole lot of work in that space that is super interesting. And then how does all this surface in sort of the day-to-day work life of somebody in the Microsoft ecosystem? Somebody using Microsoft 365, using Microsoft 365 Copilot. How do I start to turn that from a chat-based interface alone to something where I'm really interacting with the work of many agents and experiences? And so we have some really exciting stuff across all those categories that, some of which we've already kind of tipped our hat to and shown off in some early form, but others of which is, kind of rapidly coming together. So if I told you everything, then you wouldn't invite me back again. But
we're looking forward to seeing the rollout. Matt's heading to the Power Plant conference in October.
Yep.
He can say g'day and buy you a steak.
Exactly.
I had a really good steak yesterday, actually. So next time you come to Australia, Ryan, I found the best steak restaurant in Australia.
Maybe that's
fantastic.
Maybe that's our bombshell.
That's an invite.
That's a big claim.
Yeah.
That's a big claim.
Maybe that's our bombshell announcement, Ryan. When are you coming to Australia next?
Oh, that is a good question. We are just starting to put together our travel plans for the whole fiscal year. So right now I have very few commitments beyond being in Vegas for some Power Platform conference in October. But
okay. All right,
I will let you know when I get that clarified.
Yeah, pencil it in. So it'd be awesome to have you out here, and we'll definitely be able to take you to a whole bunch of customers and show you how impactful your work has been. So, which is awesome. All right, well, thanks, Ryan. Thanks for your time. Fantastic to have you on the podcast. I know everyone enjoys listening to it, both inside Microsoft and external, and our customers and partners and things like that. So it's great to have you on.
Always a pleasure, guys. And likewise, thank you for what you do. I think it's one thing to just build tools in Redmond, but I think there's a lot that goes into making them useful, making them effective in the hands of customers. And I think it's both the work that you all do in your day jobs, but it's also the community you create through assets like this. So it's just an honor to be part of that, and always a pleasure to come chat about it.
Awesome. Any final words, Matt, before we wrap up?
No, looking forward to catching up with Ryan in Vegas. We'd always catch up for a meeting, and the meeting flies past. We look at it, and Ryan's EA is kicking us out of the meeting room for the next meeting. So looking forward to doing that, and maybe we can get a steak in Vegas.
There you
go. So we'll catch up then. So, awesome.
Thanks, cool. Ryan.
All right,
cool.
Take care. Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in to Powertime, your source for practical insights across Microsoft AI, low-code, and digital transformation. And just a reminder, this podcast does not represent the official views of Microsoft. The opinions shared are those of our guests and hosts. If you found value in today's episode, share it on LinkedIn, drop us a rating on Apple or Spotify, and subscribe on YouTube for more. You can also check out our full archive and behind-the-scenes updates at powertime.au and on Substack. And finally, if you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, please don't hesitate to reach out. In Australia, you can contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or Kids Helpline on 1800 55. 1800, you're not alone. Help is always available. See you next time.